Hello and welcome back to another Nordic Takedown episode. Today we have a super exciting one, a bit different than the last one talking about PQs. Now we're going to talk about some spoilers and jumping into Lightspeed, going to be so much fun in March, and some sideboarding. But first and foremost, today we have a guest on. Welcome, Gustav.
Hello.
It's super nice for you to finally be here. Gustav Gekelund, many of you, many know, probably know already. So nice to have a new guest. And then Viktor, welcome.
Yeah, back as usual.
Yeah, so already spoiled the topic for today. But first, let's do a quick round. What's happened for in the Star Wars Unlimited world for you guys?
Well, I've basically been prepping a lot for my PQ coming up. We've got the Stockholm PQ coming up this weekend, and I'm actually getting to play. So I've been prepping for that, playing the store showdowns, basically like practice games for me.
Nice.
Did all right in the alpha spell. Showdown got in fifth, just missed out of the top four cut.
Ooh.
And yeah, it's getting there. I'm gonna stick to my guns and play my Krennic deck as I've promised everyone, but I don't know where it's sitting really in the meta right now. It could go either way actually.
Yeah.
So been doing a lot of testing or actually practicing at this point because I think I might change a card here or there, but it's pretty well tuned by now.
But at least you know a bit of the local meta, right? So you can
kind of, yeah, of course. But then like the local meta is about 30 people maybe, and there are over 60 tickets sold. So half of people showing up won't be local.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, and Gustav, maybe you can do a bit of extended to introduce yourself to the listener who haven't met you yet.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Gustav, or if you're in the Discord forums, you will know me as Gekelund. First and foremost, I'm a board game enthusiast. I just love the social aspect of sitting down with people and playing a game. And within that niche, card games is what I think are the best thing to play. Started out with Magic, like a lot of other players, and been moving around playing some Pokemon, tried Yu-Gi-Oh, Keyforts, played a lot of Star Wars Destiny, and now Star Wars Unlimited.
Nice. We're happy to have you.
So I play locally down in Gothenburg, and I'm one of those people that organize play in our two stores that run the game right now.
Yeah. You had your store showdown just the other week as well, right?
Yeah. So we had two store showdowns, one in December and one in January. And the reigning champion in both faced Matthias in the finals, both store showdowns.
Damn, nice.
So I think he's out for revenge soon.
Yeah, just you wait.
Yeah.
Luckily for you, he will be judging in Stockholm.
That's also a shame. Like, I can't find a babysitter this time around, so no PQ for me.
Next time.
Yeah, next time. At least I managed the Copenhagen one, which was a really fun experience.
Yeah,
but like I never. Yeah, same. And like I never competed in a card game before. It has mostly been casual. But SWU has really scratched that itch for me. It's been super fun to get into it. It's crazy how much you need to learn to when you start like scratching the surface of competitive play and lines and how that works. But it's been super fun.
Yeah.
Maybe we can help a bit today with one piece of the puzzle, the sideboard. Then I'm gonna round up the last week. I've been playing a bit online, really enjoying just playing different decks, honestly. Played a lot of Anakin before the Copenhagen PQ, but now I've been playing Han Green, Krennic ECL, Django Tarkin Town, and just find the meta quite fun. But honestly, a bit scared of the Swoop Racers Django deck. So fast. So
It's so fast
that's
and
right
so
now what I'm trying
controlling.
to crack.
Yeah. I mean, how can it have so much board control when it's so fast? That's so scary.
All right. Then moving on, we have some news actually. There was the FFG stream updates to the game. Viktor, why don't you tell us about that?
No, so we finally got the details of rotation, and I guess it wasn't much of a surprise. They follow pretty much the exact formula they did for Destiny, and it's kind of a standard idea that you rotate in blocks, really. So 3 sets will form a block, and those 3 will rotate at the same time. So any block will be valid for another block, and then it rotates. So you will always have 2 blocks that are valid, and when you start a third block, then you rotate out the oldest block that was valid, and you go up till you filled out the new block, and then you rotate out the next. So we will basically be going between the smallest size of deck pool we will ever have will be 4 sets, and the largest sets we will have would be 3 sets. And then when you start a 7th set, a new set, you will rotate out 3 old ones.
So
and this is
6 will be the largest.
So exactly. So you will go from 6 sets when we have the 6th set released, and then when they start releasing set number 7, 1, 2, 3 moves out, and you're down to having only being able to play set 4 through 7 up till you get to sets. What's that? Set 9, and then when they start set number 10, set 4 through 6 rotate out, and this is the pattern. And this is kind of what I would have assumed that they would go with. It sounds very much like Destiny. Like I said, they also did 3 sets a year, and since it's 3 sets a year, 2 years is pretty average, I would say, for the life of a rotating card game in the rotating formats. So for Destiny, they had different formats for older formats. So they had Eternity, and then they had something that were in between Eternity and the rotating format. So we might see something like that. At this point, they have only announced that there will be an Eternal format. There will be a competitive format that is pretty much the same as standard, like the Premier we have now, only that you can play basically all cards. There might be a separate ban list for such a format as well, but
and that one will release as soon as we have the first block rotating out, right?
Exactly, at the point when they're rotating. So about March next year, they will, by that time they will announce how the Eternal format will look, and there might be something that is in between that might be announced there, where maybe you keep 5 years worth of sets, but not Eternal. Also,
but we still need to go
very
5 years in before that's relevant, right?
Yeah, exactly. No. So also they were very clear on the that there are no rotation for Twin Suns. So if they ever organize like competitive level events for Twin Suns, those will not have rotation, as far as they've given, like what they said now. And then we've got a little bit of news when it comes to the booster pack. Well, like what the sets might look like. So they are going to have more legendaries in each, more different legendaries in each set. So they're going to expand the number of legendaries in these sets, which would make it harder to collect a full play set of any one of them. But in order to sort of adjust for that, they're going to make the drop rate of legendaries higher. So now it's about 1 in 8 packs. So if you buy a box of 24, you could expect, you're not guaranteed, but you could expect to get maybe slightly more than 3, because you also the legendaries can also show up on other spots. Yeah, exactly, the foil spot and the hyperspace spot. So you could expect somewhere between 3 and 4 legendaries if you buy a box or a display. So now you're going to be able to expect 1 in every 5-ish packs will have a legendary. So the chance of actually getting a full play set of any one legendary will be about the same, even though there are more legendaries. So yeah, it's not going to change that much, I guess.
Yeah,
that's pretty much what they announced on that news stream.
Yeah.
Just to add about the booster packs there. The S cards from the Spotlight decks that used to show up in the organized play boosters will now appear in the regular boosters. They said something about as hyperspace.
Exactly, in the hyperspace and hyperfoil slot, they might show up. Yeah. So instead of having to get hyperspace versions of those cards through organized play, you can now actually find them in your boosters.
Yeah.
That's
and
also
might be like enable them to make some other cool things in the weekly boosters. So they haven't yet showed any, but we'll probably see them in an upcoming stream.
Yeah, they pretty much said they were going to show that in the stream.
And I think they also kind of teased a reasoning why there are now 10 more common cards in the future sets. But they didn't say so. They said like, okay, you'll understand why, but I don't know. It's at least going to be 10 more commons, 2 fewer rares, and 4 more legendaries.
Yeah. It's all to do with the balance, I suppose.
Yeah. All right. That covers the news. Then quickly before we go into sideboarding, let's do a bit of a PQ outlook. Viktor, you already mentioned we have Stockholm coming up now on the 8th, and then Oslo PQ is the week after.
Just to be clear, if you want to see the Stockholm PQ or the Oslo PQ, our YouTube channel will live stream the full events. You're going to host the Stockholm PQ this weekend, Jonah? Yeah, bringing on some interesting guests as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna have some German players and casters joining on, Dylan and Jasper. So that's gonna be nice. And I think Jakob is also joining in. So gonna be really fun having some guests on to co-cast, not getting too lonely in my 10 hours of grind.
Yeah, I have so much respect for that. It does take some out of you.
Yeah, and then you'll be remotely casting the Oslo PQ, right?
Yep, for sure. Also bringing on some guests for that. I will hold off on spoiling just now exactly what we're bringing on, but I do have guests from across the pond joining us. So yeah, it's going to be some cool guests as well.
Yeah, and then I've mentioned it briefly here and there before, but really, really excited to go down to Zurich, to the Two Moon store in person.
Oh yeah,
doing a live cast together with none other than Thork. So that's gonna be really, really cool. We're gonna try to make some promotional content and put up some to get you all to watch, possibly.
Yeah, I'm actually looking so much forward to watching that stream.
Yeah,
I think you guys did such a great job with the last one, and
and this time we will have like professional production, hopefully.
Exactly. I'm actually really excited about this.
So that's gonna be cool. Then Gustav, can you take us through maybe a bit of how the results have been? Now looking at the
for this weekend
numbers.
Yeah, sure. So we're about a bit over halfway through all the PQs. It's been 93 PQs all in all. And man, Han is dominating kind of here with 32 wins. So that puts him
Yeah.
on 34.41%
Yeah.
of all the PQs. Second at 11 wins is Sabine. And Queenland also has 11 wins.
So Queenland had a good weekend this weekend, right?
Yeah, both the Tarketown version and the ECL one. Especially the ECL version was like one of the decks I worked on in the beginning of the set. I kind of did not feel it, couldn't find a way to really make it work. And then it started showing up now in January, and it's super cool. And that version, like with the bounty on the quarry and shoot first, Cobb Vanth, really crazy stuff to get that swarm going. I really like that deck, and it's so different from what was worked on in the beginning.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good deck. It's really fun to play as well. Yeah. So any other movies and shakers this weekend?
Django started climb. We also seen Boss Green picking up some wins.
Yeah, we speculated a little bit earlier that this could be due to Han prevalence, that all these decks have decent matchups into Han, right?
Yeah. And I think it's not that like Han is really good into Sabine, and Sabine is the second biggest deck in the top eights. So that pretty much can explain why Han is winning as much. But we'll see if the Sabine start dropping and we see more Django, Queenland. Don't know if ECL has that good of a matchup into Han, but I think Tarketown does.
Yeah. I think it's kind of important to also look at the fact that both Sabine and Django, they're very dominated by one kind of deck, like one base, leader base combination. But with Han, we have all four colors, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at the top 8 numbers, Han Yellow is not that far away from Sabine ECL and Django Tarketown.
No.
So
and the Han Yellow deck is very different from the Han Green deck, which is in turn even more different from the Han Red deck.
Yeah.
Like they're very different decks. They even try to do pretty different things. So yeah, they're not the same.
Maybe we'll now see like a new wave of decks and players who are more prepared against Han. Like the percentage, even though it's very high, it went a bit down from last week. So maybe we can observe this trend.
Yeah. I don't think Han ever was in the same kind of toxic situation that we did see Boba in the other before that. It looks pretty healthy, the whole thing, to me.
It was like if it were week 2 or 3, his win percentage was at 40. Now it's down to 34.41. So it's going down.
Yeah, and it's kind of always also very subjective, right? How you perceive playing against these decks. With Boba, it was like a problem that Boba existing kind of stopped a lot of other decks from existing. With Han, you could say the same maybe about the DJ thing, stopping some decks from getting to go off, but still, it's so much more telegraphed and so much more counters and things you can do. Maybe with the sideboard.
Yep.
All right. That could be a timely segue, even though I didn't mean for it to be.
Super smooth.
Okay, so sideboarding, as you all know, in Premiere we have the minimum of 50 cards main deck and the maximum of 10 sideboard. And we, of course, gonna have a competitive focus on this talk because that's what you want to use your side for. You want to make your deck even better in the best of 3 games.
Yeah.
And when it comes to sideboarding, there are many different approaches, right?
Yeah. I even actually switch myself. Like I have one approach to how I think about my sideboard in the beginning of when I was starting out with a new deck and building it.
Yeah.
And then like later on when I'm very comfortable with the deck, my sideboard philosophy, if you will, is very different. Like
Yeah.
it evolves for me through the deck's life cycle.
Yeah. Yeah, I really agree with that one. When I'm building decks, often I'm just putting together cards. It's often more than 50, and then like a natural thing for me is just push those to the side and see if we can make something with them later. But I think that in general is not a good way of actually making the sideboard, because then you just have a bunch of extra stuff that does what your deck already does. But maybe you would rather use your side to fill out some gaps that your deck doesn't already do with the main.
Yeah, I think that's like the first approach I would take when I've got my 50. Like the first thing I would do with the deck is try and get a 50 deck that I think is good. Like I try to find 50 cards in a good balance, get a deck that is very much playable and get a lot of reps with it. And then I start building a sideboard for it. And then that is very much my approach to it. What are the holes in the game of this deck? When I start exploring the deck and finding the strengths of a deck and weaknesses of a deck, I try to patch those with the sideboard. So that would be my main focus as I am developing a new deck. And for quite a long time, that's going to be how I approach building my sideboard. I think that's a very good way to learn your deck as well. You understand the main deck better as you're thinking about the sideboard in that way. I think that's very useful, at least for me, when I'm working on a deck.
Yeah. Would you say you agree, Gustav?
Yeah, like when I started with this game, I really looked at, okay, so net deck and then how do you sideboard this? Like it's always the same. And that's how I used to sideboard before. And so when you can't remember how the exact card you were gonna put in and out and stuff like that,
Kind of like
it,
rule
it gets
based.
kind of troublesome. But now how I do nowadays, it just make it feel more natural for me in how I do it. Like I play my Quinla deck and I see bounties or the dark saber or like anything that upgrade I want to remove. Yeah, I switch in my disabling fang fighters. Like I see, okay, this game is gonna go long. Yeah, I switch in my pillages. Like I think more on my feet today with my sideboard than I did when starting. I like the approach that your deck is 60 cards, and just the 10 you don't want to start with, and you can really build how you want in that way, that you can have sideboard cards like straight in if you're expecting a matchup very often this like tournament, and you can have one of those cards in your main board directly.
I think that's where I get to that approach of like building a 60 card deck rather than a 50 card deck. That's where I'm with when I really know my deck and I've been working on it for a long time. I sort of expand it to, I'm not actually thinking that much on whether or not a card is in the sideboard or if it's in the main board. I'm thinking whether or not I want it in the deck. And I'm basically thinking, I'm constructing the deck as a 60 card deck. And then I'm cutting down 10 cards and putting them in the sideboard depending on how I think about the meta for that tournament that I'm going to. And so I'm kind of pre-boarding in a way for what I'm expecting, for what I think I would like my first game to look like. And sometimes that might be that I try to pre-board a little bit for everything, or it might be that I pre-board for a specific thing that I think I need to be able to handle even game one. So for instance, for a while there, we had Bosk Blue quite large in the Swedish tournaments. Like there were a lot of really good Bosk Blue players around, and that deck needs some specific answers, almost as specific as a Sabine countering. The very specific answers to that deck, and that aren't really good against much else. But since it was so prevalent and it often went to time, I wanted to win that first game.
Yeah.
So I would have my deck pre-boarded for Bosk Blue, and then I would sideboard. I would rearrange it for everything else, and that strategy was all right for a little bit there. And now I'm back to a more general approach to my deck, I suppose.
I think you're both touching on interesting concepts here. Like Gustav, you talked a bit about how to side when you're playing too. Like that's also a big skill to learn, not only building the sideboard, but how to use it also in your games. And Viktor, you said like building the 60 and then kind of moving 10 depending on what you want in your game 1. I feel like that's a nice approach, but also then you might not have the ultra specific, completely unexpected cards that sometimes can be useful in the sideboard. Like because if you just build a 60 card deck, then all of those cards should be cards you would want to see almost every game, if I think of them in my deck. But maybe we disagree on this specific point, but at least my point is that I think sometimes cards can belong in the sideboard, even though you only want them in very specific cases.
That depends on the meta, right?
Yeah.
Like for some metas, yes. But for that to be the case, you need to have a certain risk of actually running into the decks where you need those specific answers. So a good example would be Boss Green and Sabine. Both of those decks actually require some very specific answers. So I would have cards in my 60 that virtually only do they work, but I wouldn't want to run a card that isn't good in at all in any other matchup. So like I did run cards specifically to counter Django, but those cards were just too bad in all other matchups. So they, in the end, they were cut from my 60.
But
if the card is too bad, don't want it.
That's interesting, actually, because depending on how you build your side, if they're like generally playable or some are like very specific, it's also gonna change how many cards you swap out between the games. If your sideboard is very specific, maybe you're just swapping 2 or 3, but if you have this broad selection of just some variants to your 50, maybe you can switch out much more when you see, okay, this is aggro, this is control, mid-range, whatever.
Yeah, I often switch more or less all my sideboard coming in. Like I usually put in somewhere between 6 and 10 cards every game.
Yeah.
So, and again, like I'm thinking of it as 60 cards, and I'm not thinking as much about what I'm putting in as I'm thinking about which cards are least useful in this matchup. Which 10 cards of my 60 are the ones that are most situational and least impactful in those situations. So which cards I don't want to run a card that isn't always, at least to some extent, useful.
Yeah.
It's just that I'd rather see these ones. I want my deck to be more consistently seeing these cards. So I'm going to cut these ones that are slightly less impactful in this game.
Yeah, that's a very nice way of looking at it. On the topic of that, there's something rule related I actually want to mention about the sideboard, because many of my games at tournaments in person, people keep asking me, how many cards did you side? But that's not public information. Like if you want, you could do just like Viktor said, take your whole side into your deck and then remove up to 10 cards. You can keep more.
You can?
Yes. So if you have a main deck of 50 and a sideboard of 10, you are allowed to just put in the whole side and then in game 2 play with your 60 cards.
Oh, so they changed that?
Yeah.
Because you weren't allowed, before you had to have the same size of your, like in the first iteration of the rules? Because I
The
remember
thing
people
is,
being
let's
angry about
say
that.
you play a 51 card deck
Mm-hmm.
and you have a 10 card sideboard. Then you, of course, can't go down from 51 to 50.
50. No,
But you
exactly.
can go up. So you can add your sideboard without taking out
can go up.
cards. But
Okay.
let's say you take your whole side, shuffle it in with your deck, or just put them together and remove 10 cards. Your opponent sitting in front of you doesn't know how many cards you sided out, right? So that could be a way of doing it if you're very competitive at the sectors or regionals, so you don't give away any information. But at least when people ask how many did you side, you don't have to tell. The only public information is, of course, if you're adding cards, so increasing your deck size. So that could be
that's
like
public.
nice to say, like, I'm playing 52 cards now.
Okay.
I mean, you're not required to say it, but if they ask how many cards are in your deck, then you have to say it, because theoretically they could count. It's public information.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, then you have this whole thing, like different games have different rules. And this game, you are not allowed to bring written sideboard guides. So you cannot bring any, like, you can't write down your ideas, like, for this game, I want to sideboard this way or something. So you can't have any notes on that. You have to do it. You have to memorize it or do it by heart. I always do it by heart anyway, but yeah.
I think sideboard guides have a place. Like, in general, doing it by heart is more natural, might be better, so you don't just stick to these rules. But I think having at least an idea of what you switch in many of the games will speed up the process. And I found myself wasting so much time figuring out what cards to cut. I always know, oh yeah, I definitely want to add these 4 or 5 cards from the side. And then I'm like, oh, just like browsing through, like, oh, what do I cut? What do I cut? It's wasting so much time.
Yeah. No, yeah, I don't personally have a strong opinion on this. I don't understand why not allowed to bring a sideboard guide. Really, I don't know what the point of that rule is, but I don't need it myself, so for me it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Gustav, do you have any like specific ways you build your side? Do you always have copies of 3, just one-offs?
Oh, it very much depends on the deck. I can go just 2, like 5 cards of 2s, or like 1 off, a 3 off. Like, it's what I think complements the deck and does what I like the deck to do. And I just switch out or just add in when I need to. But also, like, one thing I like to touch on is the importance of when you're practicing, do best of 3s to practice the sideboard. Man, that really helped me to be a better sideboarder.
Yeah,
Just play it out.
Couldn't agree more.
Enter with the 50 you decided on, and then you have 2 games or 1 to test stuff.
Yeah.
You really add that into your practice routine.
Yeah,
for sure.
And if you have limited time and there's one very specific matchup you want to test and you want to see maybe if your side can help, you could also do some pre-sided practice games.
But do tell your opponent, like if you're playing on light sites or something where they can't even tell and you're just doing it, people might get angry with you. Like, be open with your information to the person you're playing with.
At least, yeah. I think if there's nothing at stake, then they don't really have a reasoning to be angry. But yeah,
they probably don't. But why make like we're trying to have fun, and where a large portion won't think that's a good move, like they will be angry with that. Why do it that way? It's just simple. I pre-boarded a bit because I want to practice that. Is that all right? Like, there are ways to communicate with your people you're playing, and we're doing it for fun, like you said. So try and be civil and open to the people you play with. That's usually a good thing.
On the topic of like one-offs or three-offs in the side, I think that's a weakness of mine, that I often put a lot of stuff in the side just because I like the idea of them, and like, oh, in this match, oh, I want to have so many options, and my sideboard ends up with just 10 one-offs. And I think it's not necessarily the best. At least this way you have kind of a toolbox, so you'll always find something that you think, okay, this is useful, but then you might want 3 of them. I mean, you just have one.
I have the
Yeah.
opposite problem. When I do cut down to my 50, I tend to want to leave a one off of that because I want to have an out. Like, I don't want to take out all 3 copies of this quite specific card,
Yeah.
and then I run into that deck, and I so want to see that. I want to have at least one of them in my main deck that
Yeah.
first game, so that I have a chance of drawing it. And I think that's really bad, though, but I'm doing it often.
Yeah.
I think your Anakin deck from the Copenhagen PQ
Yep.
pretty sums up that pretty well.
Yes.
Bunch of one-offs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Let me see if I can find it here and try to roast it a bit, if it's something I should have changed.
But I mean, like, you're supposed to have some fun with the deck and build your own flair into it.
And many of those
and
cards,
if it works, it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like,
Definitely.
for instance, say the Concordon. I had 2 of them in the main. I didn't expect that much Django, so I just put the 3rd in the side. I mean, there it makes sense. It's a one-off and not more. And it's the same with Open Fire, Restored Arc, and Extra Fell the Dragon, so forth.
Yeah, but that's not really one-offs then, because you already have other ones in the main deck. You're just going up to the full complement of a card that you might actually take out against other.
It's different if you just have one in the whole 60. Yeah,
exactly. If you got a silver bullet, you want to have that silver bullet for something, and you add 1 into your main board.
Yeah,
like I see a lot of green blue villain decks, and they run 1 super laser blast in their sideboard.
Yeah,
and I'm thinking to myself, if you think you need that card, shouldn't it be 2? Or probably 3, you know? Or if you don't think you need it, why are you playing it? You know?
Yeah. It's very, like, the whole discussion around one-offs in Stars Unlimited is, I actually like the spice of just having a one-off. For some reason, I feel like I just luck out and draw it when I need it.
I definitely think one-offs have a place. I often run one-offs of different things, but those aren't cards that are super specific and super, like, because then I need to see them. I run one-offs of, like, if there are 3 different units doing kind of the same slot, and I want to have like the variety of them, I might run 1 of each rather than 3 of 1 of them. That's often how I do it, especially in testing. Like, then I always do that in order to start, like, seeing which one I wanted the most, like, and I might go up on that one.
Yeah, I think when you have a very specific idea in mind, for instance, I mentioned the Django list from Soup Racers. And Zip played 3 Confiscates and 3 Disabling Fangs in the side.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
It's a very clear use case, right?
And like, those are super specific, but he really wants to see him.
Yeah.
When he's running those cards, he wants to be able to get rid of a attachment now.
Yeah. And then it doesn't help to just have 1 Confiscate in the side.
No.
Because you're not going to draw it when you need it.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, Gustav, do you have some final comments on the sideboarding?
No, I think I've said what I wanted to say about the subject. Just keep practicing. Once you feel it gets good and you start winning game 2 and 3, you know you're on the right way.
Yeah, definitely. Is it time to sideboard in some spoiled cards now?
Oh, yeah. this is what we've been waiting for. We have been touching a bit on some spoilers, especially those who have dropped while we're recording. That's kind of been the trend, like, oh, I just saw something pop up on Discord. But now we're actually going to take some time to talk a bit more about them.
Mhm.
And first of all, I'm super hyped. This looks so cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really liking what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
So many
I
fun
love
cards.
I love the new mechanics they've spoiled.
Yeah.
Like the piloting mechanic it's a great mechanic. It's one of those mechanics that add versatility to cards, and I'm always favor of that because I like to have choices. Like and piloting really does that.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm looking forward to.
It's so cool.
And then also they've been really good at filling out like the tribes that were lost to us, the lost tribe, like lots of what do you call it? Not keywords, traits. Lots of traits that haven't gotten any new cards in a long while are seeing really a boost of influx of new cards, which I like. So that's something I like.
Yeah. So a quick summary to those who haven't really been watching spoilers. I know most people are when they pop up, but some might just be super focused on this set and PQs. Jump to Light Speed is all about the space arena, I would say. Also, like vehicles in general and the pilots that can pilot these vehicles. And I think one thing I've noticed, which is super cool, is that many of the leaders actually care about the traits. We have so far 13 leaders spoiled, so 5 to go, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, that sounds right.
For instance, Wedge cares about pilots, Rose cares about vehicles, Piet cares about capital ships, Durant cares about transports,
Holdo cares about resistance, and Phasma cares about first order.
Yeah, and today we got Luke, fighters.
Yeah,
So there's a lot of trait synergy here.
I like that. I think that's a fun way to build decks. It gives you sort of a opening portal to deck building, and then obviously you're not confined to the trait, but you want to do something with the trait. So you're going to try out cards with that trait and try to find synergies. It's a good way to make deck building quite accessible, I think.
Yeah. So before we recorded this, or we started recording, I sent you guys a challenge to find 3 cards you were really excited about. Maybe, Gustav, you could start to talk about yours and also read out the card. So for the people at home, if they haven't seen the spoiler, will know what they do.
Yeah, for sure. So the first card I took is a card that will slot very nicely into my Quinlan deck, and that is Ahsoka Tano Chasing Whispers. She's a 3/5 Fringe and Force unit, and she has, when played, an opponent discards a card from their hand. If it's a unit, you may exhaust the unit.
Ooh.
Yeah. No, yeah. Like,
and it's 4 costs.
Perfect. Yeah, 4 cost, which is a slot that yellow heroic has been slightly weak on. So you got really strong 3 cost, and you got some really strong 5 cost. But the yellow heroic there needed more 4 cost, I think. Really relevant traits in Force.
Yeah.
Like the Force trait is really relevant and really, really good when played.
Yeah, I compare to Kira, but I still think Kira is the better card. Kira wins games. But in a Quinlan deck, she can take the K2 spot. Because she will always discard a card. And she also gets force throw online.
Yeah. That's solid.
I think so.
And if they discard a unit, you get to exhaust one of their units as well.
That could be a really nice
and
tempo.
And I think in a Quinlan deck that kind of cares about tempo, being able to tap down units might actually be really, really good. Like you got Leia then, and you got this that both have the ability to tap down on demand.
Yeah.
So, well, this won't tap down on demand,
No.
but it will often tap down.
Yeah. All right, then second card.
So second and third are a synergy I really like. And it starts with Devastator. It's an 8-cost aggression villainy. It's a 9/6 Imperial Vehicle Capital Ship. And it says you assign all indirect damage you deal to your opponents. And it has a when played ability which has deal 4 indirect damage to each opponent. And did you want to comment on that before? Or should I reveal the synergy first?
Go.
Yeah, so the third card then is Planetary Bombardment. And it says deal 8 indirect damage to a player. If you control a capital ship, deal 12 indirect instead. So here you get to deal 12 indirect because Devastator is a capital ship and you assign all indirect damage. So can you win with 12 damage? Yeah. Put it on base.
Probably.
Do you need to just wipe the board? Yeah, you do that. That's what I really like with it. And like what's with indirect damage is like you're always gonna choose the worst way to disperse the damage. But here you get to do it instead.
Yeah.
So that was what I was trying to or thinking about jumping in with. We haven't actually talked about indirect damage.
Yeah.
It's a new mechanic of this set. So for those that haven't followed along with spoilers, indirect damage are I would make indirect damage on my opponent, but my opponent gets to assign where it fits, but it is unpreventable, so it moves under shields. So if you have a shielded unit and you place indirect damage on it, you take the damage, but you keep the shield.
Yeah.
So it kind of gets in under shields, which is interesting.
So in the case where you have a crafty smuggler and you've been assigned 4 indirect damage, you have to choose where to put them, and you can't say all of the 4 go on crafty. You have to actually distribute them.
Yep. You can never assign more than the amount of total HP left on the unit. And if you want the crafty to survive, you can only assign 1, but he will get to keep his shield, so he will still have that at least. Yeah. So I think indirect damage, like Gustav was going into there, if it's not a huge amount, you at least get to assign it in a way where it makes the least impact on you, since you are assigning yourself to yourself.
Yeah.
So being able to actually direct where you want the indirect damage to go on your opponent is super strong.
Yeah. So you can almost think of Devastator as kind of a big unit with a mini barrage, right? Because you can take the 4 damage and just bloop, 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 finish off some damaged units maybe.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. And since it's indirect, it doesn't care about shields. So you can just take out a shielded unit with 4 HP left.
It also goes through Lurking TIE Phantom.
Yeah, you can put it on Lurking TIE Phantom. A lot of the things that would help you get around damage, you are still vulnerable to indirect damage.
That's good to know.
Definitely. Yep. And with the planetary bombardment, it's going to be nasty. The thing is, it's only 6. It only costs 6. Obviously, you have to have a capital ship out, but there are quite a few capital ships that aren't as expensive as Devastator. Yeah. You can have a lot of different capital ships at 5 and so on. So even if you're not playing it with the Devastator, where you get the shoes, you still, if you have to assign 12 damage, how often do you have 12 damage left on your board. That doesn't, no biggie. Like if you have 12 HP, that is no biggie to you. You are very much winning the game anyway.
The thing with planetary bombardment to me is I feel like it's kind of a win more card. Like it's not really progressing your board. It's not something you want to play on 6. It's more of a late game thing. So when you maybe need to close out, or if your opponent is very low on their base, you can play it, and they're forced to put it on the units, right?
I think kind of a neat strategy would be like if you play capital on 5, and then you play bombardment on 6, you own the board. Like
but
any capital that you play on 5,
12 on the base, and you're behind on the board because you didn't play anything on 6.
Well, again, if they put 12 on the base, if you manage to do 12 damage to the base in one move for 6 cost, that's not a bad thing. That's actually quite good.
But life is like a resource, right? You don't want to play for a cause I believe in on 3.
No, that's true.
But
if for a course made 12 damage, you might.
But you get my point, right? It's
I do. Definitely do.
Okay, maybe
I'm just saying that I think planetary bombardment can actually be a thing in aggro decks. It can actually be very useful in those decks, probably.
Okay, Viktor, do you want to do your cards?
Talking about aggro decks, so the leader that has me hyped up is Phasma. Like, I think she might actually open up a proper villain aggro deck. We've seen Kylo decks do okay, especially at the end of set 2 meta. Kylo Yellow was performing quite well, but none of those decks have been completely consistent. And I think Phasma has the potential to be really, really strong. If you look at the card pool, they've spoiled with her. So let's read her first then. So she's one of these tribal leaders. She cares about First Order. She is a 5 deploy leader with the action ability, a free action that doesn't cost anything other than exhausting your leader. And it says, if you played a First Order card this phase, deal 1 damage to a base. So kind of the Sabine ping, but conditional, but not to your own base. I don't think that it matters that much that you can't do it to your own base, but it does give you that reach that has been so important to Sabine. It's a slightly slower thing. Sabine can often just, first action after she lost her whole board, but she needs that extra damage and she just pings, This won't be possible with Phasma because she has to play a card first, but still, it's a really good reach thing to be able to do that last damage. And then once she flips on 5. She's a 4/6 statted, which it's quite all right at 5 with that stat, 4 attack, 6 HP. She's got a on attack. If you played another first order card this phase, you may deal 1 damage to a unit. If you do, deal 1 damage to a base. So that's really strong. So I think her inherent strengths are that she can hit base at least once, probably quite hard, and she can do that extra damage then probably. So you're at least getting a 5 damage strike to the base when she flips. You might want to play her in green to get access to ramp, and then you get it even faster. But even if you don't, that's pretty impactful. And then you've got all that first order synergies that's coming. So you've got some really cheap units that are doing quite a lot. Chief among them would be things like Allegiant General Pride. When indirect damage is dealt to a unit, you may defeat a non-unique upgrade on it on attack. If you have the initiative, deal 2 indirect damage to a player. So just accelerating either your board state or that win con, and that's a two cost unit, so it's a first turn play, a 2/3. It's good. And then General Hux, each other friendly first order unit gains raid 1, and he's got an action as well. If you play the first order card this phase, draw a card. And this is exactly what you want in these decks. Just being able to play sheep units and get a wide board, get raid on a lot of those units, and then draw more cards. Because most of the wide strategies has been having the problem of running out of cards. But if you one of your key pieces draws you cards for playing cards, well, yeah, that's good.
Very interesting. I think the fact that she depends on playing first order cards makes me a bit like skeptic to if she will be like super strong, because we still need to get great first order cards, right?
Yeah.
It would feel bad to have to play suboptimal cards for her leader ability to even work.
For sure.
But definitely going to be fun seeing what people can brew up with her.
Yeah.
All right. Was it then my cards?
Why not?
Yeah. I have picked 3 cards that kind of represent different decks. The first one is the new Han Solo. It's a 5 cost heroism cunning card, a 4/5 pilot with ambush, but he has a piloting cost of only 2. And when played as an upgrade, you may attack with attached units. If it's the Millennium Falcon, it deals its combat damage before the defender. And the piloting upgrade gives +2/+3. So already, it's kind of like Bosk. So a 5 cost 4/5 with ambush is decent, or I would say pretty good. But the piloting here, that's what's amazing. The fact that you can attack with attached unit immediately, regardless, it's amazing. Like Hotshot Blaster, it's everywhere. And if you attach it to Falcon, which you definitely will play, possibly all 3 of them, but at least the 3 force, which are great to put pilots on, then you get kind of the shoot first effect, right? Or the Han Solo other unit effect. So like this card, I was just already super excited for Wedge yellow. And when this got spoiled, I was like, oh yes, come on, give me more. If you don't know, Wedge is a leader that can exhaust for free to reduce a piloting cost by 1. So
we already know how strong resource cheating is in this game.
Oh yeah. I've put together a Wedge deck already with some proxies, and I have been testing. And I can tell you, it's so much fun and it's so fast.
Right.
Because we've gotten so many pilots that just cost 1, which means you can play a 2-drop and put it on turn 1
for free.
And then next turn, swing for 4, play even more pilots. And as you said, Viktor, pilots are so versatile. You can also play them as units.
Yep.
The only thing I would say, the weakness I found with the Wedge yellow deck is that yellow doesn't have that many great, yellow and green heroism doesn't have that many great 2-drops for space. So hopefully we'll see some in this set.
Yep.
And probably.
I'd assume they get some at least. So yeah, seems doable.
Yeah. Then that was the first card. Second card is Resupply Carrier. It's a capital ship, I think. 6 or 5. Let me.
Yep, it is a capital. Imperial vehicle capital.
Yeah, and this card represents Piet to me. Piet is already green, and he reduces the cost of capital ships. Ramping in green is amazing, as you know.
Mhm.
And this with triple dark raid is so
Yeah.
good. 4 resources, right?
Yep.
Cost reduction of 5.
With Piet 3 resources.
No, because it's
No,
an
you can't
action.
combine them.
Yeah.
No, yeah,
Sadly.
it's an action, so you can't
Yeah.
combine it.
So
Yeah. Well,
you-
still 4.
yeah, and we got another great spaceship for 60 invisible hand. So
Mhm.
you can pretty consistently with yellow Piet on 4 resources, triple dark raid, either ramp or find this other huge spaceship that lets you play droids for free. And it's just
Yeah.
a power play right there.
Yeah. No, and I mean, if you triple dart raid it at 4, and then it bounces to your hand, and you Piet play it at 5 again, so you have a double ramp 2 turns in a row with this.
Yeah.
You're getting this unit. It's a when played.
Yeah.
It's not when defeated. It's just
That's
you get to keep this big ship.
and remember when you
and
triple
ramp.
dark raid on 4, you go up to 5.
Yeah.
You deploy Piet.
Yep.
You have him out
Yep.
for the next turn when you can play. Oh, it's all good.
It's super broken. I'm not sure they understand how broken this combo is, and I think this is the reason you want to play Piet in the first place. Like, he gets to ramp this way. He gets this alternative ramp that's just so much stronger than the ramp we've got in the game at this point. So yeah, and since he doesn't necessarily care that much for that, a turn 2 ramp thing, that's not his big thing. He want to get to the big capital ships, so ramping from 5 to 6 and then from 6 to 7 is just as useful to him. So yeah.
What do you think, Gustav? Are you also excited about Piet?
Piet, I'm super excited about. Both with the yellow, so you can run TDR, and with red, so you can run like Ruthless Raiders instead.
And Devastator.
Getting them out cheap, and Devastator, and Planetary Bombardment.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's
but
it's
I
a
also
wide
like
open
this
world.
This resupply carrier. When I first saw it, I was like, maybe Hero can get like ramp decks now, because mostly we've seen, Han Green's been a ramp deck, Han Yellow also in a way, but they don't have that many cards to use as ramp. They had resupply and the is it called Spark of Hope, that where you need to have a unit die before playing it. It's not that good, so maybe, I don't know in what deck I would put it in right now, but maybe it can help see hero ramp as well.
Yeah, I think a deck like Yoda might be interested in this, and possibly Mace Windu decks could be interested in this. The more controlly heroes might be looking at this. It's green, and it's not a color they've been preferring so far, but this could be one of the things that actually opens up that color for them.
Yeah. All right, then my last pick was also a pretty new spoiler. You're all clear, kid. So another quote from Han Solo. And let me see. Oh, I was on the wrong page. There it is. It's a 2-cost event. It's a gambit in vigilance and heroism. And it says, defeat an enemy space unit with 3 or less remaining HP. If you do, and an opponent controls no space units, you may give an experience token to a unit. So already, just the first part is pretty great. It's like a mini takedown for space. And considering there's so many new great space cards, and I think a lot of decks will utilize space more, I think it's really nice.
And I mean, it's remaining HP. It's not cost. It's not static. So even big units can be. You can combo them down. Like, you can hit them, get them down to 3 remaining, and then use it. That's already what people are doing with vigilance and killing those 3 last remaining HPs. So it's super useful, probably.
Yeah, and also great to take out cards like a 7 Fleet Defender. And then you have the bonus if it's their last space unit. So after, they don't have any space units left, then you can give an experience.
And since this is 2 cost, it's super useful turn 2. Like you want to have a unit obviously in play, so turn 1 it's not as impactful, but in a deck that wants to clear the board all the time, like you both of you play, and if your opponent didn't manage to arena dodge you, you get to hit their turn 1 play maybe, and then you kill their turn 2 play with this. And yeah, that's it. You know.
Yeah. So I hope that we might see more answers to space, because I'm a bit scared that like every deck has to super respect it now, because we have great space decks like Django, for instance, already, and now with Wedge and Luke upcoming, we'll see.
Yeah. No, it's gonna be so interesting to see what this meta looks like, because I think this set will shake up the meta so profoundly.
Yeah.
But then again, it might just be that the decks we have warp, because a lot of these cards will slot really well into Django or into Sabine. Like, these are 2 of the decks that really have gotten a lot of interesting new cards in this set so far. So maybe we'll just see very different versions of decks we already have. Like, if you look at a card like BB8, that's slotting straight into Sabine right as it is. Like, that's just a super strong card. You get to use your Poe twice. Okay, that sounds good. And I get to play. I get to make my red 3s even better, or my A-wings, or whatever I've got in space. Just put a BB-8 on it, and I stand Poe up. Yeah, that seems good to me. For how much? How much does this got? 3? Oh, it cost me 3. All right. You know, it's super good. Like, if you compare this to something like Bravado, which already did see play, but Bravado had conditions on you having killed something to be able to play it for 3, and it did only that. It just stood your unit up. But with the BB8, sorry, you play it on a unit, making that unit better, and you're standing something up.
Yeah, you still have the big condition though of being a resistance unit. So
yeah, but again, Poe. Like, yeah, I couldn't think of a unit I'd rather have stand up than Poe. That's the one unit I always want to stand up again. You know, so yeah, sure, that's a condition I can live with.
Yeah. Any cards you think would slot right into meta decks we have today, Gustav?
Of course, there's a lot of the complements Django and those you mentioned. But also, like, kind of more excited to see where the new leaders can get into the meta. And what will build around that, like Grand Admiral Thrawn, with building a deck around when defeated abilities looks so much fun. And I think it can be really powerful. Would definitely start looking there, see what people can make up. And also, like, yes, I don't know if it will become good, but it poses a deck building question to see if anyone can solve it, and that's the solo leader with the odd costs. Like, if you can solve that with a bunch of odd costs and it works really good, it's gonna be so much fun. And that's for the really good deck building people.
Yeah, I have to mention, on the topic of odd costs, in the Wedge deck I built, I play a new pilot. Let me find this name. Boshek, Charismatic Smuggler. He's a 3/4 for 3 in yellow, and he has a piloting cost of 2 that says, when played as an upgrade, discard 2 cards from your deck. Return each of those cards with an odd cost to your hand. And after building my deck, I realized, okay, I have 12 even cards out of 50. This is crazy. 1 costs upgrade that draws you 2 cards.
Yep.
Oh,
And make your deck stronger. Your board stronger.
yeah.
It does advance your board. Like, a lot of the time you're going to play a experience for basically 1 cost. Like, getting an experience on a unit would basically cost 1. And that's not a bad thing. If you look at Ray or you look at Tarkin, they actually have those abilities. And here you get at least the HP 1 for 1. You don't get the full complement of the power increase of 2, but you get 1 power increase, and you are able to maybe synergize with a unit that likes to be piloted. It's going to be good.
Yeah.
And you draw 2 cards.
Okay, guys. Then I think last thing we touch upon on the new set before ending this episode could be maybe some speculations for the green and yellow rare base, because we've seen 2 amazing rare bases now. The 35 health one in blue that gives you 1 less cards in your opening hand, and the red one that lets you play a deck of 45 for 27 health. So
do we honestly think that there's just going to be another green and another yellow? Because I think we're going to get another red and another blue and 2 green ones and 2 yellow ones. Because I think there's going to be 1 base with more HP and a drawback for each color, and 1 base with a boon and a slight decrease in HP.
Interesting. Yeah, because we've seen both ways now. But I feel like it kind of makes sense that the blue one would be defensive and the red one would be more aggressive. But I'm thinking maybe a green base could be something with like starting with more resources. Like,
or more cards.
Like you get to resource 3 cards from your 6. But that would probably have to require to like be 25 health. I mean, you have 1 less card in your opening hand because you resource them, right? So
yeah, I would value that high. So maybe 23, 22 HP to get
yeah.
1 extra, start with 1 extra resource.
Yeah,
that's crazy. That's going to be very expensive. Like you said, you only get to have 3 cards in your opening hand, but also like you go down to something like 21 HP or something, 22, 23.
Interesting. Yeah,
it's got to be expensive.
You value
that's
it
the
very
case.
high.
But I think if the case is that we only get 1 in each color, I think green would be the more likely one to have more HP and a deficit, like a negative ability. So hard to say what that would be. Maybe green could have something in the vein of like more HP, but they cannot play units, or they can only play units first turn or something like that.
Yeah, that could be cool to have some conditions on playing cards.
Or they could have a deck building restriction. That is, they could have more HP, but they have to have more cards in their deck.
Yeah.
It could be the opposite of the red one.
Yes.
It could be, that could definitely be the case. Like they might mirror each other. So what would then be the yellow if it's opposite to the blue one?
1 extra card in opening hand.
Yeah, of course.
What? That could be cool.
That's obviously it. Yellow is obviously getting an extra card in their hand, and they get a lot less HP. And green gets more HP, but they have to have, I don't know, 52 cards, 54 cards.
That could
I don't know.
be very cool, actually. Let's see.
I think that's it.
Let's see.
I think that could be it.
Maybe we hit bullseye. All right, guys. Should we wrap it up then?
I think so.
Yeah.
This has been a really good one.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for coming along, Gustav. Pleasure to have you on.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And hopefully we'll see more of you later.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, don't forget to check in on Jonah, see to his mental health that we at least get a lot of watchers or viewers this weekend, because he's going to struggle for 10 hours just to bring you the pleasure of watching the Stockholm meta battle each other out.
I feel at the end of the day, I can put my 2-year-old on the camera and they will just have a normal conversation like nothing.
I do not doubt that could be the case. I definitely felt that way when I finished up my 10 hours stint for the Copenhagen PQ. Yeah.
All right. Then, may the force be with you. Bye-bye.